I don't know if you can agree with the diagnosis or not, that what the failing has been an economic failing, a messaging within the economic issues towards the middle class. But if you do accept that, is it to go in a libertarian direction or a social conservative direction?
I think it's to go in a libertarian direction. When I was covering the campaign during the primaries, whenever you'd go to any of the Republican candidates' rallies or events, you'd go to a Ron Paul event and there was so much energy, so many young people, so much enthusiasm. You go to Romney, Gingrich, Santorum, there weren't many young people and there wasn't that enthusiasm. So I honestly think that it's not a question of whether the Republican Party should go in a libertarian direction. I think it's going to go in a libertarian direction because we're seeing that a lot of the grassroots activists, the really, really active ones, are young people. They're the ones who took over the state conventions, and they're the Ron Paul people.
I could not disagree more, respectfully. I hope that's not the case. And I think when someone says the Republican Party needs to go more libertarian, you're essentially saying to values voters, you need to care less about life, you need to care less about marriage, about faith.
That's not fair.
That's not true. That is not true.
Certainly it is.
Ron Paul
is saying to them, stop talking about religion.
No.
Stop talking about social issues and a strong national defense, and talk more about how we don't care so much what you do.
At some point, libertarianism and social issues actually very much coincide. I mean, and I think that identifying those, if we're talking about the way to move forward. And by the way, a lot of the guys you're setting up on the board, I think, are preparing themselves to fight the last war.
Right.
We don't know what the electorate will look like necessarily in 4 years. We don't know what the core issues will be. We could be right in the middle of a war with Iran. We don't know. But back to this libertarian issue, Essie, I see what you're saying, but I think that there is there is room for both of those wings in the Republican Party to actually see very much eye to eye on things. You know, when you have the state now telling people that matters of conscience are not protected under the First Amendment, that's something that libertarians and social conservatives...
But that's my point. I think we need to find common ground. I don't think that Republicans need to become more like libertarians to get more Ron Paul activists. And I would never tell libertarians, get on board with our hawkish foreign policy. We need to talk about the areas that we agree on and be the big tent. And the diagnosis... The thing we didn't do over the past 6 months or 4 years was explain why conservative policies work.
I think we did that.
I
think fairness beat freedom in this election. I think we have to accept that.
Let's return to the diagnosis.
Presence beat principles.
It didn't work.
Let's return to the diagnosis because I agree with you, SC, and I think these guys are all suggesting the same thing. And Buck, that's not finding the next election. What many like Ramesh Panu are pointing out is it's been the issue for a long time now. It's been the driving force in elections dating back to the 70s of why Republicans have been unable to explain how their economic policies provide tangible benefits to the middle class. And I do agree. I love abstract principle-based arguments. I love it. Libertarianism, by the way, is very abstract principle-based. I understand it works from a logical perspective, but I think we need to learn how to make that applicable to people who aren't thinking that way.
It's not practically applicable. That's the problem with libertarianism.
David Brooks saying that let them be the party of security and welfare. What has that done in Europe? It has eliminated conservative principles in the way that we know them. It has eliminated actually liberals. Liberals no longer exist really in a lot of European countries in the sense of classical liberalism because welfare is a popular thing, giving people stuff. Yeah. So if we're talking about let them do that, that's not in and of itself a message.
We're talking about explain why expanding welfare programs increases poverty.
Right.
We have data now to prove that it does.
I think you're right.
Those kinds of things are on our side.
Things getting really bad over the next 4 years are the way that actually return to a conservative message. It's the only way. People have to understand that statism isn't free.
That's what we did, Buck. We played defense. We said, well, all of these Obama policies are going to fail, and then people are going to vote against him.
Right.
We spent 4 years reacting to what Obama did. We didn't find opportunities to say, here's why a conservative policy works in this scenario.
People will believe conservative principles when Obamacare, for example, collapses our health care system.
We can't wait for that to happen.
I'm with her 100% on this. You're going to have to come up with an offensive, positive message. You can't just rely on their own failures, on your opponent's failure.
Because they don't care.
The message was positive.
Voters don't care that they fail.